All right. So let's see. Well, welcome back to everybody that's tuning in again. This is episode number 27 of the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports podcast. And for this episode, we have got a lot of special guests joining us here. And just kind of before we kind of jump into all of the people that are on the podcast, the topic we want to talk about today, kind of like in broad strokes, is just to have a conversation about the women's culture in motorsports currently. And the inspiration for this, where this came from, is we were talking to Jeanette about some of the women's driving clinics or women's track days that she's been working with and putting on at Pikes Peak International Raceway. And we wanted to have a conversation about that, but then we realized, well, I mean, there's maybe a broader topic that we could talk about too, which is kind of what is the current state of women's culture in motorsports, to touch on that as well. So to have that conversation, we've brought in a few guests. We've got Jeanette with us here, Red Queen Racing, but she also happens to, basically run the show at Pikes Peak International Raceway. And we've also got with us Lea Croteau. So Lea, for people that maybe are not familiar with you, can you give us kind of an idea of kind of how, what you do in motorsports and what some of your background is?
Okay, so I guess the short answer is I am currently sort of self-considered a professional driver. I work on some films, do some commercial work, but my background to be able to do all of that was I started instructing pretty early on in the early 90s. Got my racing license at that time to go sports car racing, and just kind of drove all the way up through the ranks up into a pro racing portion of SCCA, and we can talk about that later. But since then, I've just kind of really enjoyed endurance racing much more, but I still work in the game for a lot of different car manufacturers as an instructor and professional spokesperson.
And probably also worth mentioning, you do some instruction at the Bridgestone Ice Driving School.
I have had 20 wonderful years there, and so that's been a great thing. But I've worked for probably at this point, since I've been at it for a good long time, for most of the schools that you've heard of, I've probably worked for them at some time or another. So
that's awesome.
I enjoy spreading the news.
Yes.
And joy.
And helping people go faster.
Yep, exactly. I just want everyone to have the same passion and be safe.
Very cool. Well, and we've got Kaitlin with us. Kaitlin, can you give us just kind of a little bit of your background with motorsport?
So I'm a mechanical engineer, and so at the point that I started my first big kid job, I realized my old Buick didn't look quite in place in the professional world, and I bought myself a real nice Camaro. And coworkers who had the same car were like, "Hey, come to the track with us." And I was like, "Oh, maybe that would be fun." And I did it once, and 5 or 6 years later, I now have 5 sets of tires in the garage, so many brake pads that you don't even know which cabinet to fill out of. So I started with the high performance driving events through a variety of clubs. Have done a lot with the NASA, National Auto Sports Association, Rocky Mountain, BMW Club, really anywhere I could start spinning my car around and have a good time. And then started competing 2 years ago in time trials. And actually won my season division last year. So it, from starting with a, hey, I'll try this out, could be fun, it's terribly, terribly addicting.
Absolutely. Very cool.
And you coach for NASA now, don't you? You instruct for NASA?
True. I finished my instructor training and had my first students last year, which was pretty exciting. That's especially with women that are new to it. And we've got some different questions, I think, than men about the first time we're getting onto the track, and I knew where they were coming from.
Very cool. Well, and we also have with us Alice. So Alice, if you could maybe just kind of give people that are listening an idea of what your background is.
Absolutely. So I actually got started doing the Time Attack series at PPIR.
Oh, very cool.
And yeah, I mean, this was years ago, back when it was a pretty small, little intimate group of people. And I fell in love. I mean, I had friends that were doing it. I kept telling them, I don't know, you're just driving around cones in a parking lot. Like, that just seems like a really weird, like, driver's school type of thing. Immediately became addicted. And then I upgraded from a Mazda Speed 3 to my STI and started doing road racing. And that is really where I found, like, that is the love of my life. I
Cool.
adore it. So I compete in the local time trial series, placed second last year. So did pretty well overall in that series. I do some grid lives every year. And then I actually last year picked up a drift car. So that's going to be this year's new, why not? You know?
Sure. Very cool. Well, and Jeanette, I mean, you've been on the podcast a few times. People are probably fairly familiar with you, but maybe just kind of in some broad strokes, kind of give us an idea of what your background is.
So I probably have the least amount of experience out of everyone here, which I think is cool. So I was not a car person. I actually went to an autocross because Ryan Jussix, who's on here all the time, introduced me to autocross because I wanted to be a better driver after I was in a car accident. So I went purely just to improve myself. And it was after my third event that it clicked for me, that I liked the problem solving, I liked the adrenaline, I liked the community, and it became a thing that I just did every weekend. I got from autocross to time attack at PPIR before I worked here, and then to time trials. The long-term goal is to get to wheel-to-wheel racing with GLTC with Grid Life, but we're not there yet. So yeah, and now I work at a racetrack, so it's officially my life.
And yeah, you're gonna take your hobby home with you or to work with you every day.
Pretty much, I do.
Yeah, very cool. Well, and because all of you have basically, driving for you is more than just something that you do maybe once or twice a year of going to the track, because it's really kind of something like well, either a career or a very involved hobby. What was maybe the first inspiration where you realized I really want to put a lot of energy into this hobby or into driving? What was it that grabbed you about it?
You get the lap time, and then the next time you go out, it's 5 seconds faster because you're really slow to start, and you're like, oh, sweet, I'm getting better. And now I'm at the point where, like, if I'm shaving tenths of a second off, but at the beginning for me, I'm fairly competitive and I like the adrenaline. And for me, it was like the minute someone timed a lap, I was like, wait, I can do better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the same for me. I was definitely, I think I was just at a car club event. They used to call it the Quattro Club. It was years ago. I just had like a little stupid grocery getter four-door, and it was actually even a station wagon. And when they had a timed event, I was kind of nervous. And I was like, oh, whatever. And then, when you realize, hey, look, I'm faster than all these other people behind me, and mostly men, you're like, whoa, okay, I can do this too. It was never presented to me like, it was something that women could do or should do. It was just like, I'm going to try it. So, but like you said, Kaitlin, it was just like instant gratification. It was awesome. Hooked.
Very cool.
Yeah.
How about you, Alice? What kind of was it that really inspired you to really like make this your main hobby?
I think for me, it was the controlled danger. Like, I'm a huge adrenaline junkie, right? I love having that shake that you get when you're lining up to go either autocross or road race. And it still happens. I've been doing it for years. And I still, every single time I get just that little bit of shake. But knowing that I am pushing my car in a really safe environment, it's just incredibly rewarding. And then what made me keep coming back is the community, which I know we'll touch on later. But, when your car breaks, when you have a bad day, it's really easy to be like, I'm over it, I'm done. But the people around you, I couldn't leave.
Sure. Well, how about you, Jeanette? What was it about, I guess if it was autocross or whatnot, that really made you decide you really wanted to put forth a lot of your time and energy in this direction?
I've always been motivated by personal progress and learning and problem solving. So before cars, it was rock climbing and mountain biking. I don't know if I'm much of an adrenaline junkie as much as Alice is, but there is always that adventure and live life to the fullest. But there's just something about, and this is the only way I can think of to describe it. If my alarm goes off in the morning and I'm going to work, or even if I'm going for a hike or whatever, I'll hit the snooze button. If it's the alarm's going off the morning of a race day, I don't hit the snooze button. I just get up. There's something ingrained where it's passion. A passion clicked, and I don't even think about it. I just go and do it. So it's just a driving force that's bigger than me, honestly.
For sure. And a few of you mentioned kind of like an adrenaline junkie or just like the excitement of the event. Is there just something that about the unique experience of driving a car at speed? Was that a big part of it, a big motivator?
I think for me, I'll go first since I'm probably the oldest here. But I think for me, it was once I was in the car and like Kaitlin said, just that controlled aggression, that just knowing that you could just take something to the limit like that. I had never, aside from being on my skis, I had never experienced that before. And, especially, and I know I'm speaking for the rest of the gals here, once you start wrenching on your own car and you make little changes here and there, and you realize, hey, wait a minute, I just made this change and I made myself go faster. It's just, I don't know, it's just all in. It's not just the speed factor, but for me, racing wheel to wheel is a real thing for me. I really enjoy that piece of it.
And I want to follow up on that because I came to it, I think, a little bit differently where, at the beginning, I thought I was going fast. No, like I'm much faster now. And what was interesting too, though, was at the beginning, like, there wasn't that much that you had to do. Like, you changed your brake fluid and got high temperature brake fluid, and then you could go do track days and have a good time. And so for me, the really cool part was sort of where you got to, because I'm a little bit different. I like taking a new car and I get it to a point where I'm like, yes, all of this is correct. And then I keep it the same and I want my driver skill to like improve. And it's been really interesting because some of the male instructors I've had, I'll come to them and I'm like, here's where I'm at, here's what I can do consistently, here's my best time, and I want to go faster. And the first thing they'll say is, oh, add aero, who's your tires? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is the car. I can go faster with this, like this, and I need to get better. And that's one thing that's been really exciting because to Alex's point about like that adrenaline at a new, like every time you're going to go do this, I actually got to a point where I was so comfortable in my skill level that I wasn't getting that at some of my common tracks. So then I started going to new tracks, and it was interesting because I would start out and I'd be way slower than all of the guys because I was learning the track and learning the line. But then over the course of the weekend, I would get faster and faster and faster and faster and faster till by the end of the weekend, they were all sort of, still here. And people would be like, wait, hadn't you never been here before? So I think that for women, like, you don't even really have to think about it as like being an adrenaline junkie. Like, sure, that's a really cool part of it, but there's as much of it that's like about precision and care and control, which I think a lot of women really like.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Driving is one of those things. It's an experience or an activity you can do, but there's a lot of different facets to it. There's a lot of different reasons that you can enjoy doing it. It's learning something that you are doing as the driver, giving the input to the car to make it faster, or getting better, or just improving your ability to control the car to get faster, or like you were saying, Lea, actually like how rewarding it is to make a change to the car and then feel the benefit of that change that then allows everything to go faster, or just the competition or the speed. I mean, there's just so many pieces of it that can grab you. So it's definitely just wanted to see what it was of any of those pieces that grabbed you guys.
Oh, you want us to answer that?
Oh, no, not at all. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought we did.
Heavy pause. No.
Yes.
Well, so let's let's talk about maybe like the women's track days. Just touch on that really quickly. So Jeanette, you've done that. Lea, am I remembering correctly that you've been associated with some women's track days in the past as well? I think an instructor in them and such.
Yeah, I also worked for BMW extensively, and at the performance center before they got a lot of their own local instructors. I would go out there, and they would have these Women's Day things, and my first track where I really instructed the most was Summit Point. I used to live on the East Coast, and then we tried Women's Days at Skip Barber Racing School and at the Porsche Sport Driving School. And it really is different when you get a bunch of gals together. I have to kind of be careful here because, there are some women there just looking at it from the standpoint of safety and everything. And you have to be very careful to pay attention and really listen. Don't just try to kind of spit out all of the information. But I will say the common theme is just the camaraderie and lifting each other up. I think that happens during a women's event that I've never seen during a men's event. The men's events are like, okay, well, I'm just going to go faster than you anyway. So, they're just kind of men. I've just noticed I work with men mostly, as you probably all do too. It sounds like in your fields, but they just have a different banter than we do. Like, I think we as women are a little bit more conscious of our feelings and everything. And I hate to say it like that, but it's true. Like, we're kind of like, okay, no, if you see somebody struggling, you're like, no, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Can you, did you feel this? Or, we were like super like concerning and like want to, I hate, I can just use the word nurturing because that's kind of how I was raised to become as a woman, is nurturing. So you kind of try to nurture. And what was really funny, John, anymore now, like when someone says, let's have a women's only event, I'm like, well, let's invite a shit ton of women, but just have it an all-inclusive thing. I don't really think that we need to be singled out. It to me, it almost kind of feels weird, like I should have my nails done and I don't know, the sleepover. It's not that kind of community. I think the men love teaching the women because they're so willing to learn. That is, I have asked so many of my guy fellow instructors, I'm like, well, they're like, oh, and I got my woman to be fast, faster than her husband or her dude or whatever. And I'm like, that's awesome. So, but what did you really, enjoy about all of that? And he's like, because she listened to me, like really, really was taking to heart, like what I was saying to her as an instruction. I'm like, oh, okay, well, so we're just, and so that's kind of the more global way I say, who's a better student, woman or man. It's like whoever is willing to learn, those are your best students. It's not a sex thing. It's just, some guys were raised by a single mom, so you can't put a blanket statement on anything.
Sure.
So that person really has an open mind. But yeah, it's a bit weird sometimes to have an only women's thing, but I just always am like, just more women, please, just more sisters, come into the track. I want that community to grow. Sorry, that was
no.
I'm gonna jump in. Is that okay?
No, yeah.
So I loved everything that Lea said, and I actually I struggled with the women's only event and putting them on for a minute there, because it is that idea of like, that's not what feminism actually is, where we're have to have, we're not supposed to have a class where women can just do their thing together and they can't do it with men. It's awkward. But the thing that clicked for me, and this is all stereotypically speaking, there is a women's culture and a men's culture, and women do in a stereotypical way process things differently and approach things differently. And that isn't to say that a man doesn't thrive or learn or do well in a woman's culture, or a woman doesn't do well in a male's culture. And in fact, a lot of novices do better in a woman's culture when it comes new to driving, which is another thing to kind of keep in mind, is that motorsports used to be only for people who had money to do it and the time basically. And and it's not the case anymore. Motorsports grassroots level anyway is for everybody. So a woman's culture kind of addresses that a little bit better. Sorry, rambling. But it was actually a conversation that I had with Kaitlin a few years ago, and I don't know if you remember exactly what I'm talking about, Kaitlin. And I don't know if you want to jump in. There's a study that was done with engineers trying to, if I remember correctly, to try and understand why there were more male engineers than female engineers. Would you like go over that study really quick and how we talked about it with racing?
I think it's really applicable to motorsports too. So when I was in engineering in college, I was often, one of two or one or the only female in the class. And men would go and take tools and start on things without knowing what they were doing, what the risks were, how to turn it off. And again, I'm generalizing, but I'm not going to go turn on a bandsaw until I know where the off button is on the bandsaw, so that if something goes wrong, like the risk is reduced. And that was very, very common where women wanted to have a better understanding of the risks, what to do if something goes wrong, how to keep themselves safe, how to keep others safe. And that's so applicable at the track, because I've been to drivers meetings where there will be guys who get out on the track, it's their first time, they miss the checker, they're going around, they come off and they're like, yeah, I realized I didn't know how to get off the track. And you don't see that many women who get onto the track without understanding the procedures that they need to get off the track safely. And I think that one of the, and I've really only done one women's event because they're not that common, because it's hard to make it feasible when there's only a handful of people in any given location. And I think what we need more than more women's events is more introduction and reducing that barrier to entry so that people can come try it, because it's terribly addicting. If you're the type of person where you're gonna like it, whether you're male or female, coming in and having a really strong understanding of, here's where I go, here's what I do, here's what I need for my car, here are the things I need to watch out for, here's how I can navigate this situation, here's the worst that could happen. And those are the things that I think women get more comfortable with when it's not taboo to be like, well, wait, how do I get on the track? How do I get off the track? What do I do if something goes wrong? Because people don't always ask that. And I've had several female students where reaching out to them, for instance, the night before the event, I had one girl tell me, she was like, oh my gosh, I had decided not to come. And then you reached out and you answered some of my questions and I went for it. And she had a good time. And so that's my biggest thing, is we need to not necessarily have more women's events, but help women get the info they need, and really any novice driver, so that they can feel safe and comfortable to try this really awesome, really fun experience.
100% agree.
And we see this all the time at the track where, I'm sorry, John, but I just want to capitalize on that. Like before a grid life event, PPIR, men will message and ask questions like, okay, well, how do I get competitive, and straight to how do I be fast? They never have any track experience before. Whereas the women typically were asking more like, what time can I come in for camping? Where is my camping areas? Where can I park? Like, it's a step-by-step process. So the cool thing about it, and exactly what Kaitlin and Lea are saying, is that anybody who wants to get into tracking and driving their cars and doing performance driving will benefit from a little bit more of information up front, to have it adjust again a little bit, bring in that woman's culture. And Lea said the word nurture in a little bit. Like, this is how you do it, and step by step, and then it'll actually benefit everybody.
What I was going to say is, Kaitlin, when you're talking about that, the thing that came to me was structure, and from that, like the NASA HPDE system, because the first few times that I went out to a track, it was just open track day. It was kind of like the Wild West, like you have a car, you want to drive it on the track, there's the track, go ahead. And you don't know whatever anybody else is doing. There's who knows how many and what kind of cars on the track, is just go out and run, and hopefully it all goes okay. And that was actually really stressful. And then when I went to a NASA event that had a really good structure to it, which is a lot like what you're describing, like a process, like, and we're going to work you through the process of getting onto the track, being on the track, getting off the track, and so forth. Much better environment. I enjoyed that environment a lot better. So to your points, I think that from a structural standpoint, yeah, there's absolutely some benefits. But I wanted to touch on something, Lea, that you said about the camaraderie, because that was one of the thoughts that I had. With cars and with motorsports, there's kind of an inherent part that's where there's competitiveness built into it. But then there's another part of it that there's kind of some inherent camaraderie built into it as well. And what I'm thinking of that is, just from my standpoint, is as a Subaru person. Subarus are kind of these, like, they're not all over the place. They're not a big brand of a car, at least especially not a decade ago or whatnot. And if you go to the track and you have a Subaru and there's another guy there with a Subaru, all of a sudden it's like, okay, we have something to talk about. And it kind of seems like maybe with women at the track, that maybe there's a little bit of camaraderie too, because there's maybe a little commonality, like an assumption, like, hey, we maybe have something in common. There's maybe a little bit of camaraderie there, maybe. No?
I don't think so.
No?
I'm going to just already say, and I'm agreeing with Alice. Women are bitches. I'm just going to say we're as competitive with each other as we are with the guys on the track. If there's another woman there, we're like,
maybe even more.
And it's I mean, it goes back to, like, I wonder what she's going to wear to the party. Like, it's just, it's weird stuff, but it just seems to, and it's maybe more part of my generation. I'm a lot older than you guys. So anyhow, it's just, it's a really different, I have witnessed a really different mode with women at the track. It got really competitive. Like, I'll just tell you a story, and I have so many, but anyway, sorry, Kaitlin. I idolized Lynn St. James. She was, like, really only one of maybe 2 or 3 women in motorsports that were in the media often enough to know who they were, and that, like, that was someone to look up to. I actually aspired, to do everything she was doing. And, I was super honored. I got a scholarship to go to her driver development program. And I had very big difficulties with the way she treated me during that. And it was mostly little girls like this, like small little girls that she knew she could mold and, tell them to get into go-karts. For me, because I was older, the oldest one that was there, I was like a write-off. She didn't hardly even paid attention to me. So I went up to her one day at the museum, and I said, hey, thanks for, this. It's been kind of an interesting experience, but, honestly, I haven't really, gotten what I thought I would get, is this sense of, camaraderie that we've been talking about from you. And she's like, oh, and I'm like, but what you did do to me is you made me want to push harder to prove to you that I could do it, just like you did at the age that you did it. Because I got into motorsports late. Like, I started when I was 29. Okay, so that's late by a lot of people's standards. And so she just looked down her nose at me. And I just, from that point on, I've just always, I always kind of, and believe me, I was on the pace car team for PPG, and we were 14 strong women from all sources of motorsport, all, working for the IndyCars thing. And, everyone, all the guys were like, watch out, it's going to be a big clique, and I was like, no, it's not going to be like that. We're going to be all besties and friends and everything. And it is not always like that. You find your people, but that's not the feeling, but I want it to be,
Do you think part of that is just mindset, maybe? Just like people, like where people are, why they're there, what they're trying to get out of the experience or the event?
I think we all bring our own stuff to anything that we approach. And, the people who stick with racing, they sort it out. I think in any competitive sport, or any business that's competitive, I think you think you're here you know, like I'm a big fish in a little pond, and then you jump into a bigger pond and you're like, oh shit, you know, you get the smackdown. Sorry, I'm using profanity on your recorded show. But
It's okay. It happens.
you can bleep me out. And but anyways, it's interesting, you know, it brings people's inner battles up
Sure.
to the surface.
Can I jump in though? Because I do see, so having done both the HPDE events and a lot of like more kind of collaborative and learning events, as well as competition events, there's a difference there, right? I mean, the women's events that I've done where it was like a car control clinic, obviously super fun because everyone's there to learn and have fun. When you get into competition, I don't think it's necessarily fair to assume that everyone's still going to be like, hey buddy, hey pal, like you're there to win. So I would, you know, women are super competitive, and I totally agree that I'm not necessarily gonna run up to another woman at the track and be like, hey, you're a woman, I'm a woman, let's be friends, because we're individuals too, right?
Sure.
But I do think that at the entry level where people can be getting into, you know, HPDEs and stuff, people are really supportive. And I would even say when I was doing high performance driving events, you know, people, men or women, are always very willing to help. When you get to the competition point, there is kind of a level of like, well, gee, if I help you with this, then you're gonna beat me. So I think there's a little bit of that, because I think, Lea, you've done probably a lot more competition, and I bet that comes out a little bit more maybe.
Well, and just, it's an important distinction. Like, is the purpose of an event to learn and develop, or to actually compete? Those are definitely kind of polar opposites.
Yeah.
I do think that there's this unfair way, though, that women look at other women who drive. And this might just be me, but like when I see a woman and she's driving, things go through my head that do not happen when I look at a dude who's driving. Like, you know, you're in a lineup and it's 90% guys and you're like, cool, nice build, whatever you've got going, that's awesome. If I look at a girl, I'm like, you know, is she a good female representative for motorsports? There is a part of me that does think that way. Is she going to be a good driver? How about her social media? I mean, it comes down to really dumb things like that. I'm always checking myself, like, what does her Instagram look like versus, you know, Joe Schmo over there? Is every picture on her Instagram like a selfie of her with her car in the background? There is just this weird perception, and it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I check myself and have to remind myself that it shouldn't matter. But there is that bias there. It exists.
So girls did not grow up getting, they didn't learn how to get along in the playground like boys do. So, and something that we used to teach girls when they were in their teenage years was, and boys too, if a boy walks into a party, he's looking at all the girls, because he's looking to see like who the hot girls are. If a girl walks into a party, she's looking at all the other girls too, because there's something wired in her head that ties her self-worth in comparison to other women. So if there's a hotter girl in there, then we're all suddenly less hot. If she's a better driver than me, then I'm suddenly not a good driver. And it doesn't happen with men, it happens with women. So I would say that is actually a benefit to having the women's event, and Alice could attest to this. Because stereotypically speaking, women are very social creatures and we're motivated by relationships. So if you can have a women's driver clinic, you kind of rewrite that culture of, you're not here to tear each other down, you're here to celebrate each other. And we do that a lot, like at the one with that we did at PPIR the other weekend. If somebody spins out, we're all cheering each other on. We're all there to support. And that rewrites that insecurity that some women have, where they instantly see another female at an event, and all those insecure feelings come, and that lack of trust. It's like, no, you can trust other women at the event. Now on the racetrack, it's in the competition, that's totally different. But in the paddock, you can trust them.
Sure.
And I would say that having different cars and different events is really helpful, because I have absolutely had cases where I'm like, oh man, like she looks way better. But then I'm like, oh wait, like she's like doing Miata stuff and I'm doing Corvette stuff. Okay, it's cool. We can be friends because we're never ever going to compete. Like 650 horsepower, like 200 or whatever Miata has. It's like 130 or something. So
Is that why we're friends? Because I drive a BRZ.
absolutely. Now, if you get a Camaro or a Corvette, we would have to reevaluate our relationship.
That's funny.
Is 2 thumbs up from me. And like the drift car, that's awesome because I can't drift at all. And I'm like, sweet, Alice, I'm like your biggest drift fan now.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny you mentioned that because Jeanette and I have been friends for a long time. And she really is my best friend. Like we get along so well. We're 2 peas in a pod. And the hardest friendship day that I've ever had with Jeanette was the day I let her co-drive my car. That will put a friendship to the test like nothing else because Jeanette gets in my STI and she kills it. I mean, she proves that she is one of those drivers that can get in a car and just execute brilliantly. It pushed me. I did end up beating her barely, but it was my absolute last run of the day. I launched the crap out of my car. I actually broke a motor mount. I launched so hard, but I was like, I am going to beat her. And, it's just a reminder that like, I had to check myself. It was an ego check. It's like, Jeanette's a badass driver. It doesn't matter if she's a dude, doesn't matter if she's a girl. Jeanette's just badass.
and that's what I love about mine and Alice's friendship, besides the fact that she builds me up so much. Is that day was, we were competitive. We were hard on each other that day. But when she got in that car and I saw her determination, like I wanted her to beat me. Like I still wanted her to succeed. But then the minute that I got in the car, I wanted to beat her. Like it was this, and that's such a weird thing to coexist of like competition and full love and support for someone to like do it, just fucking do it. So, and she did. I was so proud.
Like when I compete against a guy, there is a tiny little part of me that's like, okay, like if we both have Corvettes and he does edge me out, well, okay, he's a guy, he probably grew up driving. And like Lea said, I think a lot of us come to driving later in life in women's motorsports. Well, when another woman beats you, you don't have that excuse. Like, sorry, but like she's just as good. And so, and I will also say in competition, it always cracks me up because some places do men and women compete equally. So that's what I do because I like that. And then I have competed in some events where ladies and men are separated, and it's hilarious because out of, there will be 7 women competing and I'll get, second or third out of 7, but there will be, 40 men competing and those 7 women would have been like 2, 4, 6, and 10. And you're kind of like, okay, man, when they get divided like that, being like, oh yeah, I got second out of 7 sounds kind of worse than like I got 4th out of 40. So the women that are in the competitions tend to be good. And so it's kind of tough. But I am really excited to hear like more women doing this and reminding myself too that like, no, like even at the competitive level, you should be nice, be building each other up because women really are terrible to each other and we need to be better about that.
Well, let's.
And with that, I actually have to run, so I'm going to drop off while I'm still talking. But thank you so much. Nice to meet you, Lea and Alice and Jeanette.
Nice to meet
Great
you.
to meet you.
All right, thanks, Kaitlin.
Thank you.
Hi, Kaitlin.
Bye.
Well, and unfortunately, we've lost Kaitlin, but I wanted to maybe like take 1 step back, maybe 2 steps back, and let's just. So, what do you think the current state of women's culture in motorsports is like present day? Is it like, I guess just what is your feeling of that? What is your feeling of the present day?
Well, I'll go first again, I guess. I think just because I travel around and I get exposed to a lot of women and a lot of different, events and everything year long. And, I kind of follow different things in the news as we all do. And I think there's, I feel like, okay, we got like, a tide is surging, where it's just more, it used to be very strange to see maybe 1 or 2 or 3 girls, like I used to go down at the runoffs at SCCA and go through the whole book and go, how many women are here competing? And then I would go run around the paddock and try to meet them all. And I've made some really good friends doing that, because I was like, okay, I'll support you, you know, I'll cheer for you, and I'll, you know, whatever, and help you if you need help or whatever. And it was important to me to have that kind of space. And then it got kind of weird a little bit when Danica Patrick was out there, you know, and we were all praying that, you know, it wouldn't just end up in her being in a bikini or something like this, which it ultimately did. But anyhow, I just didn't want her, like, kind of what Kaitlin was saying, her to be like this representative that was going to do that. I wanted to, you know, not pose in front of the car. I want you to just be badass behind the wheel all the time, like, you know, with men. So, you know, we all have our own ideas. Now what I'm seeing though is just more women out there. So we're coming, right? You know, we're a force to be dealt with, right? We're buying probably almost 50% of the vehicles out there, and buying, you know, the automotive products out in the world, right? So we're a force to be reckoned with. But it disappoints me to see that, you know, we're looking at an all women F1. What the hell is that?
Oh, Formula W.
Yeah, what the fuck? Sorry. Dang it. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's a duck. Sorry one. Anyways, it's just disappointing. I don't like that. I know people are supporting it on both aisles, and I'm just like, okay, so we're not there yet. I just want it to be equal.
Yeah. Well, Jeanette or Alice, what are your thoughts kind of is the current state of things?
Did you want to go first, Alice?
No, you go, girl.
Okay. I think there's definitely, and I can only speak on the grassroots level, there's definitely a lot of growth. And ironically, I think COVID kind of helped that a little bit in the last year, because people got stir crazy and the women got stir crazy. So we had an event, and which is the track attack at PPIR is like the grassiest of the grassroots. Like, it is the perfect gateway drug into motorsports. And we had one event towards the end of the season when COVID started to lift up a little bit, and it was warmer weather and people could be outside. And there was like a whole, like, so many women showed up, and they were there with some of them with their boyfriends, some of them with their husbands, and some of them with their girlfriends. Like, they already had like a female friend who came. And it was just crazy to see that many women at that event. And I think part of it was just like, they just want to go out and be with people, and yeah, let's try something new. It kind of sparked the adventure a little bit. And it's really fun to see how many of those women are actually still sticking to it. They got that little taste. So there's definitely a growth. And yeah, and I think it's essential. I think with all the barriers that grassroots motorsports has, and I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, the woman, what women bring to the culture is going to help grassroots motorsports survive. That's like, and it's just in a very general sense, it's just like how I believe it to be.
What do you think, Alice?
Man, I totally agree with what Jeanette just said. I was like beaming listening to her, because, you know, we both share this passion of just getting more women in cars on tracks. And, you know, when I started driving, I brought ego to the table. I think a lot of people do naturally when they start this sport. And obviously that got checked pretty quickly, because I was not good. You know? But what it also showed me is that there's this fear, I think, that women have of not being good enough to come and participate, to come and play. Like, I don't have my own race car. Am I even worthy of coming to your autocross or coming to your HPDE day? And one of the great things about these women only events, and one of the great things about like the Track Night in America series, they just really promote bring what you've got. Bring what you've got. If that's your daily driver, awesome. If that's your husband's car, awesome. Just bring it. Dip a toe in the water. Get a taste for it. The other thing that I love seeing is more women instructors. Like, that has been such a cool shift and change. When I started driving, I think I drove probably for 2 years without ever meeting a woman who was like, oh yeah, I'm an instructor. It's like, whoa, that is so cool. And having a woman in the car, it's just different. It's different than having a male instructor. Both are good in their own ways. Like I've driven really great days where I've had male instructors. And I've driven really great days where I've had female instructors. So, but for me, it's just when you're a brand new novice, this is something that Jeanette and I hear when we ask for feedback after our women only events. It's just, you don't feel like you have something to prove that you do, I think, when you're driving for a guy. It's true.
Yeah, no, it is.
I definitely, from kind of like my perspective, it definitely seems like there is a kind of a surge, kind of like you're alluding to, Lea, that like more and more women are wanting to get involved in driving. And I think that, I know, it just as you were saying that, Alice, the thing that came to my mind too is like, maybe one of the things that's easy to forget about driving is, again, like there's so many reasons that it can grab somebody. Because like maybe it's the competitive edge, maybe it's just the experience, but like any one of those reasons is just as valid to get you to the track as another. It's like if you just love the experience of driving, like bring what you got. Like it doesn't matter if you're going to be the fastest. If you're having a ton of fun, if you're enjoying bringing your car out, that's all that matters. You know, obviously, like not if you're going to try and get on a podium, but if you're just in it for the experience, yeah, it's just, it can be open to anybody for any reason. So, and yeah, if more women are coming out because of that, that's a good thing. Where would you want to see things go as far as the culture in motorsports? Because Lea, let's talk about the Formula W and where, which if people aren't familiar with that, it was an open wheel series that was just for women, and obviously it sounds like that's not something that you were excited about. I'm guessing maybe, Lea, you'd be more excited if just more women had more opportunities to like step up to a higher level.
Yeah, I think, you know, and I've just been kind of watching it over the years, you know, and just my take on it just from my own full-time search for sponsorship for many, many years. And then just finally, you know, I think I've talked to you about this before, where I essentially just gave up because I was just so tired of being asked to dinner. Let's go get some drinks. You know, it was just all, it was all just going the wrong direction. So I was like, well, what does it really take for these women that are succeeding in motorsport at the highest levels to succeed? And it was, you know, male advocacy. So I think that if there are more, and there are some women's teams, there's a women's team right now that's competitive in road racing, motorsports at, you know, pro level. And I think it's in IMSA or something. And, you know, and she's going for it. She's like really trying to like, I want female drivers. Like this is who I'm supporting. I'm going to be the advocate. You know, I know how to play in this world. So I just want more inclusion. I want equal opportunity. I don't want to be separated. Years ago, there was also, you know, kind of the same thing, the women's global GT, and a lot of women that were in motorsports, you know, that I respected got involved in it. And then came the newspaper articles and the magazine articles, and it's like, okay, you're, you know, pretty good for a girl. And it's like, it just gets under my skin.
Sure.
You know? I am very fortunate just from all the years, just having the support of so many guys. In my network, you know, the guys now are, you know, I have a handful of female racing friends, and you know, we all respect each other. I think that's the number one thing, just to have that respect that, you know, you're as good a driver as I am, and you're as equipped and prepared and skilled, and that's all that needs to be brought to the table. So just that equality.
Yeah, succeed on merit.
Yeah.
Like just if you're going to be fast, just be fast, and that's what matters the most.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts, Jeanette? You seem pensive down there.
Sorry, I really want to become best friends with Leah. I want to go into deeper conversations and all of this.
Please, I need more friends all the time.
Yay. Well, and I mean, you touched on so many good things, because, and I'm a huge advocate of men as allies, but you also mentioned male advocates, and the whole women driver thing is kind of like it's an easy marketing tool. And I almost feel like that's kind of my opinion with this whole women's formula class, is that women are, it's something to get money going into the business. It's a marketing tool. And I think Leah might agree with me, but it's not really taken that seriously. If the women drivers were being taken seriously, they would be racing with the other formula drivers. So that part, like, yeah, it's great that these women are getting all that great attention, but hopefully they can somehow shift it and turn it into something where it matters in the whole grand scheme of things, not just a marketing tool. So yeah, it's interesting as far as, I guess the original question was where the culture was going. I don't remember
Where would you want to
anymore.
see it go? Maybe go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, just success based on merit, like just more opportunity. And
that's exactly where I was going to go. There seems to be this delicate line of, we want to open up the opportunity for more women to drive, but we're not necessarily like, we need to get more women here because there's more money that floods to them, or because they're sexy when they stand next to a car. So you're kind of balancing on this line of trying to open the door where women can do it on merit, not just because they're really charming over dinner, or because they look really good next to their car, or because they are a marketing tool. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I'm making sense.
I think so. I think so.
You definitely are.
One question that I wanted to ask, well, and I guess let me say this first. One of the interesting aspects about motorsports is, as you progress, as you go to a higher level, that the cost to compete goes up almost exponentially. So this is where sponsorship comes in. And so it's kind of like what we've been talking about, is it's something where most people can't foot the bill on their own to compete, maybe at a certain level, and especially as you go to the highest levels of motorsports, you need help to do it. And the question I have is about social media. And what I kind of wonder is if that's changing things to an extent. And Alice, you kind of made me think about this just a moment ago. It used to be like you had to get sponsorship. You had to somehow present yourself to a sponsor and then get them on board. And before social media, really, once the sponsor comes on board, they're the ones that kind of help tell the story and get you the funding to race the way that you want to race, but get that exposure. But now with social media being a thing where, I mean, anybody can tell their story. Like all you have to have is heck, a computer with a camera like this, and you can tell your story and put it out there. And if you can do it and present it in such a way to get it in front of an audience or get in front of people that connect with it, then all of a sudden you can you can build your own audience. You don't have to get permission or the acceptance of a sponsor to do it. You can there's an opportunity to do it on your own. Do you think that might be one of these pieces that could be used to help kind of move things in a different direction?
I think that it can be really good, and I think it can be really dangerous. I'm
Sure.
gonna be honest. The social media sword is definitely two-sided. So it's really great because I think that social media has created kind of this level playing field of, like, if you're willing to put in the effort and if you are willing to learn how to strategically use it, it's a great tool to bring on sponsorship opportunities that probably otherwise wouldn't exist. As a woman, there's a huge fine line, an area where things can go kind of the wrong direction.
Sure.
So, what do you want your image to be, I guess, is probably the biggest question there. And what lines are you going to draw with your sponsors? Like, yeah, I'm happy to rep your product. I'm happy to do some stories and get you out there, but
Sure.
I'm not comfortable doing X, Y, or Z. This is a completely professional sponsorship. It's going to be the exact same if I was a dude, period. Like, you know, a guy wouldn't be wearing a skimpy little tank top talking about your product. I'm going to be in my race suit. Like, you know, just, it
Sure.
needs, for me, the sponsorship needs to be focused on the driving and the driver and that narrative. But yeah, I mean, social media has been super cool. Look at Savannah Little. She's a friend of mine, and man, you want to talk about somebody who knows how to brilliantly market herself and use social media. It's Savannah. Yeah. Yep.
Well, and I guess maybe another question that I have, and Lea, you kind of alluded to this earlier. What are the benefits, or how effective can a role model be? Like you mentioned that there was a driver that you idolized, and that really kind of was a motivator to you. There's another one. I think you've mentioned this before. Michelle Mouton was an inspiration. Someone that is just out there, like just actually like faster than anybody else, and that's why she's the best, and that's why she's at the front. How helpful is that, or how much do you want to see more of that out there?
Well, of course I want to see that out there. You know, but the first thing is that we've got to have enough, I think, women interested in motorsports and have the competence to pursue it, to get some, you know, more, and they're out there already. You look at any racing series, and you'll usually see a female out there, which is really inspiring now. You know, that's kicking ass. Sorry, it's been too many hours around dudes. So anyhow,
Sorry.
I'm blaming on you guys. So sailor talk, and but so I'm super proud of that. You know, whoever your mentor is, it could be male or female. I mean, I just was so astonished that women were even doing it when I first started. So, and that was, you know, in the 90s. So even when I was in high school, I think I saw Shirley Muldowney movie, Heart Like a Wheel. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, this is, you know, this woman, and her husband is actually supporting her doing this. Like, he's like really trying to help her. And so I just really, I really think that, you know, if you have that strong passion, that'll take you really, really far. And the role models, you know, I even looked up at Hurley Haywood. I had one of his, you know, endurance racing advertisements, you know, from Rolex up on my wall. And I'm like, one day, you know, and I've worked and met him, and, you know, done all this work with Porsches and done 24 and 25-hour endurance races now. So it's just like, just keep going, whatever your inspiration is, or whoever that in person who's a mentor or inspire is. It's helpful to have someone who's kind of bringing you along and kind of, you know, steering you in the right direction. I have so many people to thank, you know, oh gosh, that have helped me along the way. So, and don't be afraid to ask questions, you know, male, female, doesn't matter. You know, if you need something, there's someone out there that can help you. So, yeah.
What do you think, Jeanette? How helpful is it to have somebody like that you can like look up to and inspire?
You know, I don't think Jamie Marino, who also drives, she told me, and I think she was quoting someone else, you don't realize that you can do something until you see someone else do it. So that's also a huge thing with women in racing, is that we don't realize that women can do it. It seems so silly. And just a really quick side story, and then I'll answer the question. I did a double cross competition with Huberger's Subaru Growlfest thing. And I was one of the few autocrossers with experience. It was more of an enthusiast event. So I was doing really well against turboed STIs and WRXs. And there was spectators, and there was a family who was like cheering my car on. And the mom told me this later. It wasn't until I got out of the car that one of the girls, the teenage girls, was like, girls can do this too? Like, they thought I was a dude. So it really is, just to go with what Lea was saying, isn't until you can see that someone else is doing it that makes it feel like that you can do it too. With that said, there's so many, like, I have a ton of male mentors. Ryan Dussik's, obviously. John Hunter is one of my huge favorite heroes. He's a SECA. champion. I don't know if he actually won anything. He probably has, but he works for SCCA. And as far as females go, I actually am secretly fangirling over Michelle Abate because she won in a supercharged BRZ. And I just think she's so cool. I've never even met her, but I've chatted with her before and asked her questions, and she's really nice and really supportive. So that's like my female role model, Michelle Abate.
Very cool.
But yeah, it's, I mean, exactly what I was saying before. You don't realize you can do stuff until you see someone else do it.
Well, we've had a really good conversation. We're kind of coming up on an hour, so I kind of want to kind of wind things down. And maybe one of the last questions I would ask is, what would you say to anybody, any women that are watching this or that are interested in motorsports? Like, where would you recommend starting, and what words of encouragement might you have for them to get out there to do it?
Reach
Jeanette,
out to me
go
at
ahead.
PPIR.
Sure.
Jeanette at PPIR.com. JEANETT at PPIR.com. And we will hook you up. Both Alice and I are involved in a lot of programs, not only with PPIR, but SCCA Track 9 America, which you mentioned earlier. And we will help you and introduce you to this world.
How about you, Lea? What words of advice or encouragement would you offer?
A lot of times I just tell people, male or female or young, kids come up to me sometimes and ask, how do you get started? I'm like, just go to the track. Probably 90% of this is just showing up,
Sure.
being there. That's how I've gotten some of my rides in race cars and gotten onto different teams, just showing up and having a conversation with somebody. And there's, if you just say this little thing like, here's what I think I want to do, but I need some help. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how that flips the conversation for so many people. Their attitude immediately softens and goes to male or female. It doesn't matter who. They're like, oh, well, Joe Blow over here can help you, or you can go to this school, or, I often tell people to go to driving schools just as a thing. Just go in the spirit of having fun and see if you even like it. But before that, maybe go to a track and just see if you like, what you see there and meet some people.
Absolutely. You got to get to the track to find out.
Yes.
Yep.
It's not safe to try on public roads.
No.
Yes. How about you, Alice? What words of advice or encouragement would you offer?
Oh man, I think the biggest thing is just to know that it's okay to not be a pro right out the bat.
Yep.
Like, just know that you're not going to be great, and it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl. Just be willing to experience it. And also, I always say this because I'm so passionate about it. Whatever car you have access to is good enough. People seem to think they need like a spec caged Miata to like go to the track, and you don't. Bring your Prius. Like, just take whatever you have, get out there, give it a try, fall in love, spend a ton of money, end up with a spec Miata. Yeah.
Yes.
But you got to take your baby steps.
Yeah. Well, and I think, the other thing that I would say, I guess, is a piece of advice, is just know that you're not going to start off and be the fastest driver or the best driver out there. Everybody has to start at the beginning, and you have to practice. It takes time. It takes going to the track, and so all you have to do is take the first step, and then just know that it's going to be a process, and hopefully it's the most fun work that you'll ever do. So, well, very cool. Well, I guess just we'll wind it down here. Anything else you guys want to touch on, or things you want to mention before we wrap this up?
No, just want to say thank you for setting this all up, John, and introducing me to even more lovely lady racers and drivers. And
Absolutely.
Hopefully our paths will cross soon.
Yay!
Well, then I have a suspicion if Alice is trying to get into drifting, that maybe she should have a conversation with you. Because ice driving, drifting, there's some similarities there.
We'll do so. We'll talk. Just reach out. That's all it takes, is just, to say, hey, I need help with something, and I will help you.
Yes.
Awesome.
Well, very cool. Well, thanks y'all for joining and being open to this conversation and for making the time. We really greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
So,
Awesome.
well, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much
Thank
for everybody for
you.
listening. Yeah, and until next time, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.